Hello everyone, welcome to a quick weekly update video. I hope you didn't miss me too much. I was away in Corfu, Greece, as you may have seen by my real world landing video. Hope you enjoyed that. I'll be putting out some others soon with some videos from the departure over the island and the arrival back into East Midlands. The departure video is pretty cool. We got a lot of good shots, even some pictures for sighted viewers of the cockpit, the airfield. Corfu is quite a busy airport, some of you might know. A lot of tourist traffic. There's not been a whole lot going on. TFM hasn't released any new specific updates over the past couple of weeks, just because the developer has had some technical issues and just a couple personal things going on, etc. Nothing major, no huge stumbling block, but just there's not been some big update or new panel that I can tell you about. Of course the blog is the best place to keep up to date with that. There's been a few things going on, nothing major. Let me just touch on, so we got the event going on Saturday, of course, which is going to be about I think it's going to be late afternoon, so probably something like 3 to 4 p.m. Zulu time. I need to finalize this with the other guys taking part, because there's going to be quite a few, even people not part of BVI Virtual, but it should be about something like late afternoon. If you want to keep updated on it, probably my Twitter's the best place. I'll make sure to post the details, and if you're in any of the usual groups, then you'll know about it. And we'll probably post it to the mailing list on Friday or something, just to keep people in mind. But if you're around that sort of time, we'll be doing Miami to San Francisco for the TFM anniversary event. So I wanted to just touch on First Officer as well, just to talk about what they've been doing. So mainly updates for MSFS. They have, of course, added support for the Phoenix A320, which I think I talked about a while ago, and continued making additions for the PMDG 737-700. The 600 has also recently been released for MSFS. Now, as far as I know, we're still waiting on the enabling of certain things in the SDK. Essentially, it's not usable at the moment, and the issue we have, of course, is that First Officer is moving to a graphical interface on the MSFS version, not on the P3D professional version, I should add. The good thing, of course, though, is that, as we know, TFM is working on adding support for all these panels, and the idea is that when they are fully done, and when PMDG is fully set up on their end, you will be able to do this in MSFS. And fully set up the aircraft regardless of where the First Officer works. Of course, that's a ways down the line. In terms of MSFS accessibility, I don't think there's been any real updates. It's, again, a lot of stuff is talked about, a lot of it's talk. I'm waiting for action. So again, reminder, when I say that, it's not a criticism of MSFS as a simulator, it's a criticism of it as a simulator for blind pilots, because yes, I'm well aware it's a wonderful sim. If you can see it, it's a very exciting time to be in Microsoft, but we're in P3D, and P3D works just as well for us. We obviously have more aircraft and all that good stuff at the moment in that, and I'm aware it doesn't look visually quite as pleasing, but for us blind pilots, really that isn't quite as much of a consequence to us. So P3D works just as well, and MSFS is very much still something for the future. There's been a bit of talk about vatsim as well, and this isn't really news, but I just wanted to sort of put out there how I would do things. So there's been a lot of people say, kind of in the community, talking about what's the best way to communicate with controllers and on Unicom. So Unicom, it's always best to communicate. You really have to report at the very least when you're repositioning to the runway. If you reposition to a runway and you don't report it, that is completely on you. And if you get contacted by a supervisor or yelled at by some other aircraft, that is really on you. The best thing to do is to simply say, okay, we're repositioning to runway blah blah blah, inability to taxi the aircraft due to visual impairment. Any aircraft on or near the runway, please report. That's what I do. I leave it for 30 seconds to a minute, and that gives any aircraft on final or any aircraft lining up time to report. Then you reposition. If they have not reported to you that they are in that position, that is then on them. You can say to any supervisor who may contact you, look, I made the call on Unicom, if they weren't listening to the frequency and they didn't respond in either voice or text, that is too bad. vatsim, know that we repositioned. This is not some kind of illegal thing, and so as long as you report it on Unicom, you'll be fine. You need to report where you are in flight as well, especially on approach. Keep reporting where you're at, your altitude, the waypoint you're inbound, maybe your speed, your distance to the airport, whatever you think is key information at the time. Communicate with other aircraft. Keep using TFM's right bracket P feature to see where other aircraft are at, and if they're getting too close, you might need to adjust your speed or communicate with them. I know right bracket P is currently quite laggy, especially if there's a lot of aircraft, and the speed feature is not reliable, I'll tell you that. So if you're looking at the ground speed feature, I'm not sure if it doesn't account for wind or something, but it's not reliable. But you can at least see the distance to that other aircraft nearby. In terms of controllers, you just want to let them know on the ground that you are ready to reposition, of course, once you've got your clearance and after you have pushed. In the US especially, even though you don't have to request push, request. You want to let them know anyway that you're going to be pushing, unless they have specifically told you. You do not need to ask for it. I would recommend asking them, because there are non-movement areas, which means where you cannot push back beyond a certain point without getting clearance, and we don't know where they are because we can't see the chart. So it's always worth just saying, I'm a blind pilot, just wanted to check, are we cleared to push, or are we in a non-movement area? And they might say, yeah, go, I don't care, and that's fine. So then you're going to tell them you're ready to reposition. The best way to do that, I've found, is just to say often they'll read your remarks and they'll know. If they don't seem to have twigged onto that, you can say, would you mind checking my flight remarks, and that will usually get them onto it. If they're still having issues, you might need to private message them with a copy and paste of your flight remarks, and then at that point, if they are not getting it and they are seemingly refusing you to reposition, and be careful, because sometimes they're not refusing, sometimes they're saying you're gonna have to wait. If you've got a lot of aircraft lined up at the hold short point, we can't spawn to the hold short point, we have to spawn to the center line, and sometimes they'll get you to wait. They might say, can you spawn to the hold short point? The answer to that at the moment is no, we can't, at least not without something called Ideal Flight, which is stupidly expensive just for that one feature. So it'd be very nice if TFM could add that, actually, to spawn to the hold short point. But, the answer is no, we have to go to the center line mainly, and they have to clear aircraft off the runway before they can let you reposition. So you might want to say, look, we've got the fuel, we're willing to wait, it's fine. Sometimes they might even say, if there's another runway that's not being used, a lot of airports that have several runways, will not be using one. Perhaps it's a bit of a shorter runway and they're just not using it on that day, and you can say, I'm willing to take this runway, I can reconfigure my FMC and go, if that would make it easier. Sometimes they'll do that. So you just got to work with them, offer them some suggestions. Sometimes these are controllers who have never worked with a blind pilot, so you got to be upfront and you've got to offer suggestions. Sometimes it requires a bit of a prod to say, I'll use the other runway, or I've got the fuel, don't panic, I'm going to wait. Sometimes they'll ask me, how long is this going to take? And some blind pilots will panic and they'll say, oh, they're being they're causing conflict here unnecessarily. They don't know about this necessarily. The procedure is not maybe familiar to them, and then you have to just say it will take 10-20 seconds, and then they'll go, oh, okay, that's fine. Sometimes they think you're going to slew, sometimes they think you're going to take 5 minutes to reposition and they're going to have to hold the runway, all kinds of things you don't know. So it's always worth putting that in your remarks, and always worth reiterating it if they start getting a bit concerned. That's the best way to do it. And then .wallop, so .wallop, if they are literally saying you cannot reposition, this is not allowed, that is the last resort. You .wallop them and you say, you'll get a supervisor and you just say, look, I'm a blind pilot, I have to reposition, I'm perfectly willing to wait my turn in the queue, I'm not trying to push in front, it's just the usual procedure and this controller isn't allowing it, and the supervisor will, I can pretty much assure you, sort it out for you. It might take you a little bit of time, you might have to sit there, but they will sort it out for you, because vatsim do understand this. It's not in the code of conduct as such, but it is in the code of conduct. You have to be courteous to other members, etc., etc., and there are stipulations related to this, and the supervisors know that we do this. You know, they've done this many times, worked with us, and they've had emails from us, etc. So they do know. So that's just a little word. It's not news, but it's just my take on it, and that's the best way to go about it. You have to work with controllers. Sometimes they'll get a bit skittish, and you do have to say, give them a bit of a prod, you know, give them a suggestion or two. I'll go to the other runway, or I'll hold for 10 minutes, you know, here on the taxiway if you need, whatever. If it's a busy airport, especially if it's a one runway airport, you will have to wait. It's as simple as that. You're not going to get there as quickly as if you were going to taxi, unfortunately. It's just how it is. So yeah, a little bit of advice there. Feel free to drop any comments if you have any questions. blindflightsimmer44@gmail.com if you have any you know, specific things you want to send in private, or on my Twitter, b_flightsimmer. And yeah, we are back, so you should expect, you know, weekly updates to resume as usual. We missed two, one because we did a podcast the week before, so there was no need to do one, and then last week because I was away. And to be honest, I would have done one if there was something major, but I was enjoying my holiday and there was nothing really major to talk about, so it didn't really need one. So yeah, hope you've had a good week, and I'll see you next time.